What scientific fact scares the absolute shit out of you? Scientific literature's conclusion on Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases in general is that the diseases start decades before the first obvious symptoms and that we need to treat them at this stage. When you exhibit obvious symptoms, it's too late. Your brain is already mush. If you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 65, you had the disease since your early 40s at least. And you experienced very mild symptoms, but didn't notice them. And your brain fought like hell to compensate for the deficit. When you get diagnosed, your brain is already very severely damaged and will never recover from the deficit. What are the very mild symptoms one would have in their 40s? There is nothing more scary to me than Alzheimer's. Probably one of the worst ways to go in my mind. Forgetting who you are, who your family is, losing your ability to function independently. It's one of the scariest thoughts to me. I would rather get cancer than go, though, Alzheimer's. The fact that your body can have advancing cancer and you wouldn't know it sometimes. Father-in-law's brother was walking through his kitchen and he fainted and hit his head on the counter. He was rushed to the hospital and they ran tests and he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and his body was already in the endgame. He was dead within 2 months of diagnosis. That shit terrifies me and it can happen to anyone. Pancreatic cancer is pretty much one of the worst you can get because there are no signs until it's too late. It's the rabies of cancer. Happened to my 5-year-old daughter. For a week she had a nosebleed on and off that the doctors weren't concerned about since kids get nosebleeds for various reasons. Then she collapsed a week later and was gone 3 hours after getting to the hospital. She had leukemia. I have 2 other children and I'm terrified something could happen to them too. My dad was feeling a little sick, so he went to the doctor. His main symptoms was that suddenly certain foods didn't really sit right, and he would get diarrhea a few hours later. Turned out he had colon cancer, stage 4. No symptoms until that point. He lasted 7 months, but they definitely weren't a fun 7 months. Cancer is no joke. Our white blood cells are fighting cancer cells on the daily. If everyone lived forever, we would all eventually get cancer. Statistical fact. Your cells are just gonna split weird eventually and mutate. Space just in general, or that bit about the Higgs field not being in true equilibrium, and that returning to it would break everything as we know it. The quantum physicist here, thanks for bringing up the Higgs field. It isn't something we know too much about, the Higgs mechanism in general, and though vacuum decay is extremely unlikely, if possible in the first place, it is still really awesome to learn how the universe works. I actually helped discover the Higgs boson in 2012 when I worked at the lake during its second run. Cause Gezard video on vacuum decay hattups U2 B Itchim 6 I don't remember what it was called, but there was an event in the 1800s caused by solar activity where telegraphs operated on their own without power and I think caused minor damage. Should such a solar event happen again, it would destroy all of our internet network capabilities and other electrical gear. Anyone know what I'm referring to? Edit Carrington event. Thanks for the link. The Carrington event het Ken. Wikipedia, Orgwiki Carrington event, who proved its flown. I would be interested to know if we would be as badly affected as people initially thought. A couple decades ago, sure, technology was extremely fragile and slight power fluctuations would fry everything, but these days I don't know if that's still the case. Bearing in mind that the bulk of the issues would come from the mains power grid and telephone lines picking up voltage differentials over massive distances. Most comms these days uses fiber rather than copper, so that is not as big of an issue. A lot of tech these days is also power filtered or runs via an isolated transformer that would likely pop first before toasting everything else. Smaller devices like phones and laptops are unlikely to be big enough to have enough voltage variance across them to cause any real damage. There would be disruption, sure, but I don't think it would be as cataclysmic as people used to think it would be. When the atom bomb was being created, the leading scientists associated with the project at the time had to calculate the flammability of the Earth's atmosphere in order to ensure that detonating the bomb would not cause the atmosphere to combust. At the time when the first atom bomb was detonated, these scientists still had not answered this question, meaning that we legitimately just crossed our fingers and hoped we wouldn't set the fucking planet on fire. Humans are stupid. Edit. It turns out that this is slightly wrong. The calculations were finalized before the bomb was detonated, but the reporter who covered the event was not aware of this and had overheard a joke made by one of the scientists to place bets on whether the world burned. or something to that effect. The reporter ended up with the false information that it was possible for the atmosphere to combust, which was later claimed in an article, thanks to all the people who let me know of this issue with my post. There was also, I read this back in grade school, in this book so the exact details might be off, a scientist who was sitting with a Trinity test bomb overnight when a lightning storm started. He was worried about it igniting, but then realized there was no sense in worrying because he would be vaporized. The fact that we can just get a blood clot and die and not realize anything was up. The human body has so many ways of just suddenly dying, and it's terrifying. When my friend started studying medicine, she said she's surprised we're not dead yet because she's constantly learning about so many ways and things that can kill people so easily. I'm not afraid of suddenly dying. I'm afraid of suddenly being severely disabled. It's both amazing how little it takes to kill someone and how much it can take. One person survives falling out of an airplane and another dies jumping into a lake. My baby was born with tons of blood clots. The doctors were sort of confused on what to do because he really was an anomaly. In the end, we just did blood thinner shots for 6 months, 2 a day on a baby, with ultrasounds every month to check the status of the clots. Luckily, none of them moved, and they all resolved or calcified. He tested negative for all blood clotting disorder. Perfectly healthy now. It took me almost a year before I finally stopped worrying if he was gonna drop dead at any second. Yeah, my mental health is not the best. Prion diseases exist. Worse is that they can spontaneously happen with no genetic history. Lost my brother-in-law to Cargeley last year. Yeah, I've done pseudo research, and while we had loads of precautions when handling positive samples, I always have a slight fear of being the first human case. Why do I click on this shit every fucking time? I was expecting cool, scary science space stuff. Now I'm making it a point for a physical. Life is crazy. That you could just have a brain aneurysm and die at any given time with no warning. My mom had one while she was buying bread. Not a single sign anything would happen on that day before. You can get non-buoyant water. I copied this comment from a post a while back, and it freaks me out in wastewater treatment. Plants, they aerate the water, so the bacteria breaking down the poo has plenty of oxygen. Due to the introduced air, the water density is low enough that a human body, or most any object that would normally float, will go straight to the bottom. Creutzfeldt, Jakob disease. It's genetic. You won't know that you have it. When you know that you have it, there is zero recourse. It will eat holes in your brain and you'll die. That and fatal familial insomnia, also genetic. One of your parents woke up one day and couldn't fall back asleep until they died, having suffered rapidly progressing neural degeneration. And it tends to set in around midlife, so you spend every day waking up knowing it might be the last time. You find it hard to build relationships and have a family because you know it's not a matter of if, only when. But you know you're not gonna see your golden years. Only about 5-15 of Creutzfeldt, Jakob disease cases are related to inherited genetic mutation of the prion protein, fatal familial insomnia, and Gertzmann-Strassler-Schenker syndrome. 85 of cases are sporadic occur. It's just random bad luck that one of your prion proteins misfolded and then goes from there, which debate is much scarier because it can happen to anyone. Rabies. You can have it and never know until it decides it's time. And then you'll die terribly. I used to get a bat in my old house that would weasel his way in through an old crawl space. Woke up to him flying in my room once. That was 15 years ago, but part of me still thinks I should get a rabies test done. That one day I will die. I don't know why, but sometimes at night, as I'm falling asleep, I suddenly think of this and it freaks me out. Like start feeling super anxiety. I get so scared when I think about dying that I almost start crying. It's horrible and I don't think I will ever be at peace with death. Thank you for the reward. Just know that once you die, you could either stop existing, which isn't painful, or you could discover a whole different world. Edit. Why TEF did this blow up so much luck? We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day outnumber the sand grains of Arabia. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats, scientists greater than Newton, We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively exceeds the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I in our ordinariness that are here. We privileged few who won the lottery of birth against all odds. How dare we whine at our inevitable return to that prior state from which the vast majority have never stirred. Richard Dawkins. The metaphysical aspect of consciousness. Where is consciousness? What is it? When does it really end? Where does it go when we die? When we sleep, how does it occupy our entire being without being physically present? We are quite literally the universe experiencing itself in a fragile little bubble on a mote of dust in a sunbeam. And yet what exactly are we? That's the sort of question that keeps me up at night. I don't fear death, I don't fear world annihilation, but I am deeply unsettled by the mere experience of being aware that I always end up on these fucking posts when I'm about to sleep, truly a scientific fact. Every time you use an antibiotic, even for something mild like strep throat or bronchitis or traveler's diarrhea, you technically could get C. difficile infection from your wiped out gut flora. And that could end up a lingering resistant infection that leads to colectomy or fecal transplant. Antibiotics are scary. And there's a reason doctors only want to prescribe them if absolutely needed. Edit. I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond to everyone. Our comment got a lot bigger than expected. Mortality and immortality scare me. Like, I don't want to die because I love being here and my life is generally good. But what the fuck would I do for eternity? The fact that we could get hit by a coronal mass ejection at any moment. Someone on Reddit a long time ago said this about something similar, and it stuck with me for years. If it doesn't happen, you lead a normal life, and there's no need to worry. If it does happen, it's suddenly not your problem anymore. That's just pretty lights in the sky most times. Less scary, more mind-numbingly depressing is the dark era of the universe. When all the star fuel is gone, and it will be, and all the white dwarfs have gone cold and dark, and they will, and all the black holes have evaporated away into elementary particles, and they will, the universe will be a cold, dark place. Forever, forever. But for one sweet, beautiful moment, there was so much light. If you want an ounce of hope, look into Roger Penrose's conformal cyclical cosmology. He posits that if matter decays, there will be no matter left in the universe in the extraordinarily far future. Without mass, there is no distance between things, because time is distant. Time is the difference between distance and space. Space and time will then end because without distance there is no space. Without space there is no time. And all that's left is energy. Without space-time, everything is everywhere, all at once. Similar to the conditions of the Big Bang. A small quantum fluctuation later, and another Big Bang. I chose to believe in Siki because I would hate spending an absolute eternity in oblivion because everything's dead forever. Corso makes a lot of sense to me. There are cycles to everything. Why not a cycle to the universe too? The Marianas Trench is so deep that you could fit Mount Everest in it. Even if you stand at the summit, there would still be about a mile of ocean above your head. Maybe not too scientific per se, but the fact that I could get hit by a car walking home from work and wake up in the hospital. Go on with my life, meet the love of my life, meet the love of my life, and get married, have kids, and watch them grow into their teens, and we all have a good life. Then one day I wake up in the hospital and find out I was in a coma, and none of that was real. That motherfucking lamp. The mere thought of what would happen if fire wasn't in the visible light spectrum. Good news, everyone. Methanol fire is completely invisible to the human eye in sunlight. Cockroaches can live for up to a week without their head. Cockroaches can live for 5 months on wallpaper glue. Cockroaches can hold their breath for up to 40 minutes. Yes, I have catsaridophobia. Your eyes have their own immune system, and if your brain ever figures that out, then it will eat away at them, turning you blind. Why would you tell this to my brain like that? The Pacific Northwest has a 600-mile-long subduction zone that is approximately 70 years overdue for an 8.8 to 9.2 magnitude earthquake, and nothing on that coast is built to withstand that. There has never been a strong earthquake on that coastline since European contact, because the last major earthquake happened in 1700. Unlike Japan, which had a comparable earthquake in 2011, the Pan-U isn't ready for it, and things aren't built to withstand what's coming. Someday soon, Seattle, Vancouver, Portland, and Victoria are all going to lurch 6 feet inland, shake violently for 5 to 7 minutes, and then get hit with a 100-foot-tall tsunami. It is projected to kill tens of thousands, displace millions, and wipe out trillions of dollars of wealth. The second largest humanitarian disaster in North American history, second only to Haiti. And it seems like people are just pretending this doesn't exist. We didn't really understand the risk until the 1990s, when seismic hazard researchers found evidence in flood deposits, in deep water bays under drowned forest, in an estuary in the Pound Forest, in an estuary in the Pound Dew that were unexplained. Then a researcher found a Japanese historical record for a tsunami without an associated earthquake matching tree ring dates from the tree stumps in drowned forest. A solar flare could really butt-fuck modern society. That viruses cannot classify as a living organism, and yet behave as if they are fully aware of their surroundings and evolved to suit it. They behave like they have a brain, but are merely nucleic acid. Fascinated me since my first virology class. Fuck this whole thread. That I could be the only conscious being, and everyone else my imagination, and I would never know. There is a form of insomnia that forces your body to never be able to sleep and has a 100 fatality rate. The potential for false vacuum decay. It's possible that the vacuum state of our universe isn't really in its lowest state, but is instead in a false low. If something were to cause the vacuum to decay to its true minimum somewhere in the universe, this would spread at the speed of light, and when it reached us, we would simply cease to exist. No warning, no feeling, just gone, gone. I'm fine with that. Dissociation. That shit's scary to experience. 100. Depersonalization and derealization can leave you feeling like you become mad and lost touch with reality.